Should the Arizona Cardinals entertain a trade down with Tennessee if offered? Yup.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here on location. Excuse the lighting. Clancy's Corner Senior didn't set me up for success today, like I had asked him to. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We're in Mock Draft Mania. We're in What the Hell Are the Cardinals Doing Mania, DeAndre Hopkins Mania. And there are just reports out there. And we have no idea if they're true or not, but every team could use a quarterback. I mean, there are probably 5 teams in the top 12 that could seemingly trade up and give the Trey Lance package to the Arizona Cardinals. And really quick, because apparently this was a point of contention, I know that the Titans don't have Trey Lance on their team. I know that the Cardinals don't have Trey Lance on their team. What I was referring to was the package that the San Francisco 49ers gave to Miami to trade up to draft Trey Lance at number 3 overall a couple years ago, which got them a couple future firsts. So if Tennessee has that, of their rear end to maybe move up to 3 to draft a quarterback, it's just something the Cardinals should entertain. Bringing in somebody now, friend of the show, formerly of the Locked On Podcast Network, Trevor Sikkema, now a Pro Football Focus, one of the best in the biz. What's up, dude? How's it going?
Alex, always good to chat with you, my friend. It feels like when you and I get to chat about the Cardinals draft, a lot of emotions come out. You were the one who, when we were doing our guest mock draft series and we had you on for the Cardinals, you gave us the brilliant line that is eating your vegetables, making the picks in the trenches. Dude, I use that all the time. And so, but you got to that point because you were just like sick of how they were constructing the team and everything like that. So I love talking Cardinals football with you because good or bad, feels like it's just like we're getting to the nitty gritty. We're getting into the emotional part of it anyway. So it's good to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it feels good to be right about a lot of things since we talked last time. I mean, so much has happened exactly how you and I kind of thought it could with Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim being removed from their respective posts. And now what I've said on the podcast a lot is now the Cardinals have what they haven't had for a long time is possibilities. Like, sure, things may not go well, but at least the restrictor plate is now taken off. And they can actually form what's hoped to be a cohesive unit. Now, I want to, before we get into the draft, and I'm just going to eviscerate you for your first mock draft, and we already texted about it, and I know you're conflicted about it too. But up until this point, from kind of a national lens across the country, where you don't talk about the Cardinals a lot, except for potentially butt of jokes, and really just like the last segment of something if DeAndre Hopkins is in the news. What do you think about Michael Bidwell's moves up until this point, removing Cliff Kingsbury, removing one of his best friends in Steve Keim, hiring pretty much everybody who has never been in the position they're currently in now, whether it be the coaching staff or front office? Grade him. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how these guys that are now in the seats are going to perform anytime that you take a risk and you elevate a guy to a job title or responsibility that he hasn't necessarily had before. In all industries, it's always a risk. But I think it was a necessary risk to take. They weren't going anywhere with Kingsbury. And in fact, like they were going backwards. We were in, God, what year of that was Kingsbury? 4, 5? What was it? It was year 4 of Cliff Kingsbury. And it was like, okay, things were getting worse. And you bring Cliff in to have this incredible offense, this scoring pace that nobody can keep up with. You had the number 1 overall pick when you hired him as head coach. You get Kyler Murray. That was supposed to be the recipe that was just going to be the beginning of what was going to be an incredible success for that franchise and where they were going. So it felt like it was all coming together when they brought those pieces there. But clearly, I mean, you even saw, I don't know how overblown this was necessarily because I'm not in the trenches as much as you are with Arizona media, but Kyler, it feels like operating the way that he has, both with his contract and then, the sideline shenanigans where he's yelling at Cliff and where it's not like, it just felt like it was super dysfunctional. And if Cliff Kingsbury was not going to succeed in this exact environment, getting his quarterback at the very beginning, having the resources to build the team the way that they have wanted to over the last couple of years, I mean, it was just never going to work. And the fact that it wasn't going in the right direction was like, okay, this is about to get real bad. And then Unfortunately for the Cardinals now, they're turning the page in a lot of different ways. Roster is one of them. Like, if you take DeAndre Hopkins off this team, especially knowing that Kyler Murray's hurt, this is one of the worst rosters in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a team that if Kyler does not play next year, and if they trade DeAndre Hopkins, even if they have DeAndre Hopkins, this is genuinely a team that could have the number 1 overall pick next year. That doesn't mean what Bidwell did is bad, because you often have to have the pain of ripping the Band-Aid off before you actually get to the healing process and you get to move on and hopefully be better with that. So I'd say right now, I don't know what the grade was, but it was necessary. I think that this was a move that they had to make. They had to turn the page.
Agreed. Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trey PFF joining me here. Locked on Cardinals. I mean, I said that the Cardinals have hit rock bottom, and that's exactly what needed to happen in order to grow and evolve. And I'm going to ask you this because we're going to go deep into the draft next segment, but you, like I, have never undervalued who DeAndre Hopkins is. He was on the Andre Johnson path in Houston where he never really got the pedigree that he deserved. He was just one of the best receivers in football. He didn't have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, so he didn't have that elevated, status, I guess, like Devontae Adams has had. But I'm in the camp, and I understand what a rebuild is. I'm in the camp that they need to retain him and extend him, and just go with me here. So say you give him $20+ million for 2023. DeAndre, this year is going to suck. Here's your money. Next year, they're going to have to extend Hollywood Brown. Kyler Murray comes back, and you have a bona fide wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2A, depending on where DeAndre Hopkins' health is, that is going to be rivaled by most other NFL franchises. One of my biggest fears going into last year was that DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown wouldn't play meaningful snaps together. And that's they just high-fived to the night. Hollywood Brown got hurt when DeAndre Hopkins came back.
Yeah.
And that was all she wrote. There isn't proof of concept, but there should be enough with their separate entities with Kyler Murray there to see it could be a lot worse than overpaying a 31-year-old receiver just to have him for when Kyler Murray comes back.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't disagree with, I'll say, like, the crux of that argument there. My only thing that I would throw into it is Kyler Murray the long-term quarterback for this team? And, like, for some people, that sounds insane to even ask the question of, but he's hurt. He's coming off injury. He's probably not playing next year. If you trade Hopkins, he's literally all you have. And then you are paying him massive money to not be in a winning window. And when you finally get back to what is going to be the beginning of that winning window, he's going to be older, and you're going to have to pay him again just to be a part of it. So my question is, if they're still in on Kyler Murray, like if they're like, no, we got rid of the GM, we got rid of the head coach, we're committing to the quarterback, then I don't hate keeping DeAndre Hopkins, overpaying him a little bit, if you will, just to keep him on the team, to get that rebuild started the way that it is, to not have to go to total studs and ground zero to rebuild this thing. At least you have some good players on offense. Because, like, I like Rondale Moore as well, right? I think it's a good receiving core that you have there that you could build upon. Trey McBride could be a good fourth option for you as an all-around tight end, right? All those things I think are there. But then you bring up the question, if you are going to trade Hopkins, then all of a sudden this receiving core does not look nearly the way that it does with him on it. And then you start to bring up the question, okay, if we have the number 1 overall pick next year, are we in a position where we're trying to move on from Kyler? So that to my comments on that is, I do agree with your assessment of DeAndre Hopkins. And if they're still going to be committed to Kyler Murray, having him on the roster, I think, makes sense. But if you're moving on from him, then you've got to have a conversation about literally every player on the team, including Kyler.
Selfishly, I refuse to broach the Caleb Williams or Kyler Murray conversation, because it's like when you save the last piece of cake, it's like, listen, I want this now, but I know I'll really like it like a month from now. That's a bad example for time-wise. I don't want to do that yet. Because then it breeds a conversation. When Kyler Murray comes back in week 7, he has a good year. They win 6 games. It's like, you're going to get 1,000 first-round picks for that number 1 overall pick if that's what happens. And also, you will have another line in the water if you do trade back with a quarterback-needy team to get Caleb Williams if that team tanks, namely potentially the Tennessee Titans. Should the Cardinals trade back? Should they draft at 3? Is Will Anderson a transcendent talent? Should the Cardinals have to eat their vegetables now and trade back and build out a roster that Steve Keim left, like your friend growing up who comes over and plays with your toys and leaves without helping cleaning them up. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus joining me. We'll hit the draft next. First, Built Bar. So Built Bar has been with us for a long time. I had a tough holiday season. I've gained at least a dub since I've seen you last, Trevor. There's a lot of red velvet cake over the holiday season. As we're transitioning out and we're, we just finished up with March Madness last night. When you want something sweet, it doesn't have to be bad for you. Okay. And Built Bar is the perfect mix of both. So they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. The macros are insane. 17 grams of protein, low calorie, high fiber. It's exactly what you need for in the morning with your coffee, at lunch if you don't want to eat a full lunch, after dinner if you want something sweet, but it doesn't, mess with, your insulin levels. Built Bar is pretty much everything you need for any time of day. You don't have to go to Built.com anymore. You can get them at Walmart or Sam's Club. It's never been easier to get a Built Bar. Now, make sure, and I know that the March Madness just ended, but go to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. Or go to Built.com where you can always get it. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. Alex Clancy. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Trevor Sikkema, formerly of Locked On NFL Draft. You didn't do Locked On Bucks, did you?
No, never did Locked On Bucks.
Locked On NFL Draft. Yeah, with Ben Solak. Both have gone to different platforms. Man, that was so long ago.
Dude,
we've been doing this for a long time.
I know. And I was doing Locked On NFL Draft before it was me and Ben. I was doing it when it was me and John Ledyard, which was like
John Ledyard,
2017.
Yeah, that's when I started. Mr. P Report himself, no longer. Yep. But yeah, John, man, you guys, that Tampa Bay contingent.
I know.
At Pro Football Focus, so we had Brad Spielberger, had Marcus Mosher, who's now part of the family, and has been third wheel, 3 sides minimum. Check him out. He will eviscerate you for your barbecue, shortcomings. Trevor will. Number 3 overall, Will Anderson. I've had conflicting reports. I had, I had a couple guys on who said that Jalen Carter at one point before everything, before he came in overweight and before the misdemeanors, could be a better prospect at 3 for the Cardinals. And with the Cardinals have so many needs and so many holes to fill, is Will Anderson transcendent above this class enough to where the Cardinals just should stick and pick?
Well, there's layers to that question, right? Because
I know.
Because I look at Will Anderson and he's a damn good football player, man. If the draft ends and if the first night of the NFL draft ends, Arizona Cardinals end up sticking at 3, they drafted Will Anderson, you got a damn good football player. The problem is, and I think this is the problem that people when they're looking at this angle from a Cardinals perspective, is if you put Will Anderson on this Cardinals roster, doesn't matter. Like for next year, doesn't matter. Like the team's still going to be bad. It does not move the needle at all for them. Whereas trading back would give fans and people who follow the team like this hope and this allurement of like, oh, look at these extra first round picks that we have. Look how good this is. So I think that's where a lot of the discourse is when people are like, I don't want Will Anderson. He's not that good. First and foremost, I do think he is really good. But the issue with trading back is not the same in every draft class. Right? You look at the 2021 NFL draft. If you traded from 3 to 11, you were still getting a damn good football player. You were getting a future All-Pro. You were getting an immediate starter. You were getting a really talented player. This year, if you trade from 3 to 11, not a guarantee. The class just overall is not nearly as strong. In that 2021 class, as an example, there are probably there might have been anywhere from 8 to 15 blue chip prospects, depending on who you asked. This year, there's basically only 3, and one of them is Jalen Carter, so you don't even know what to do with him. But the other 2 are Bijan Robinson and Will Anderson. So in a class where there's only 3 blue chip prospects that you would say are top tier guys, you could really see all pro potential with them, you coming away with one of those guys is what the NFL draft is all about. Right. Of course, like there's the mini games that are involved with it, with value and like addressing a need versus strengthening a strength, getting to the different parts of your roster at different points in time. There's all of these things that go into it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to draft the best football players in the class in which you are able to select from that year. Will Anderson's one of the best players in this class. So, of course, it all kind of depends what the Tennessee Titans, I know this is what we're talking about, would offer up. If you're going from 3 to 11, you have to pay that tax. Not just the tax of moving from 11 to 3 objectively, but you also, like Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, said, you've got to pay the tax because if I'm moving that far down in the draft, I then have to go into a different tier of players on our big board, and you're going to have to make up for that in compensation. That's not something you get to do every year, but that's kind of the way that I evaluate the Will Anderson situation with the Cardinals. Really good football player that would help them in the long run. But I can understand people who say, like, okay, Will Anderson on this team next year doesn't really help. I agree with you because the roster's got a lot more than that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's been the tug of war, I mean, this entire time, because it's like, it seems like, and there could be a case made, and this is how I kind of associate it with myself, is that it's Will Anderson and everybody else. If you're trading back to 7, you may as well trade back to 20. I mean, and the thing is, and maybe 20 is kind of loose, but like when the Cardinals need help at O-line, even though I know it's not the strongest O-line draft, corner, Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez. I mean, even if the Cardinals move back and like crazily to 11 and want to draft Jackson Smith and Jig, like anything that they do is valid if it's not a quarterback, a punter, or a kicker. Like they could really bolster this lineup, and getting 2 firsts and potentially having 2, bites of the apple for Caleb Williams next year. Or, I mean, even if they had top 3 next year with one of those picks, everything changes for the future of this team. And it is predicated upon Kyler Murray's health. It's predicated upon if they want to save face this year and really start to build with Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis over from Philly with the cornerstone of their pass rush position for the next, hopefully, decade. You do it. Edge rushers make a lot more money in their second contract. It'd be beneficial to have a guy in his rookie scale deal who's not making a lot, who's going to make impact. So I am back and forth pretty much daily on what I think they should do, but I think this is the last piece, watching Byron Murphy walk, watching Zach Allen walk, probably trading DeAndre Hopkins for pennies on the dollar. This is the last penance they have to pay for Steve Keim being around for so long. Yeah. And I think this is completely tabula rasa, clean slate, start over and start to get some draft capital back for all of the shortcomings for the last decade. It sucks because, but I mean, listen, Trevor, and I'm going to ask you, I don't get you out of here on this. Like, Will Anderson is there. What's to say that there isn't going to be a 1A to Will Anderson next year or 1B to Will Anderson next year? Like, he's an Alabama edge. Like, these guys are, every year it seems like there's somebody that emerges as the guy to go top 5 non-quarterback.
I kind of really like the way that you put it, where you said, if you're trading to 7, you might as well trade to 20. I agree with that. Obviously, the player that you're going to get at 20 is objectively a little different than the one that you're going to get at 7. But to your point, if you are Arizona and you are entertaining a trade back at all whatsoever, you're probably calling, Houston at 12 to see if they want to pick back-to-back, like Peter King suggested in his column, right? Like you're calling Tennessee at 11. You're calling Washington at 16 if they want to move up to get a quarterback at number 3. You're calling Pittsburgh. You're calling Detroit. You're calling Tampa to see if they would want to do it. I don't think they would because Jason Light loves his draft picks and he's not going to trade that many. But that's what you're doing at that point. I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but that's a really good way to put it. If they're thinking about trading back, you might as well talk to all of the teams that are sitting there between 10 and 20 to see what kind of an insane haul you might be able to get. Look, again, just going back to it, Anderson's a damn good player. I think that he will make the team, and he makes the roster better individually, and he could be a focal point for what they are building moving forward. But we know the defensive side of the ball especially, is a full 11-man unit. You've got to have much more of the puzzle completed before you can really start to even get the biggest impact out of those players. Whereas offense, sometimes if you have a running back who's incredible, you can just hand him the ball and they can really make magic happen. We, of course, know that happens with quarterback. Sometimes it happens with elite wide receivers as well. So offense is a little bit different in that regard. Will's a good player, though. And to what you're saying, oh, is there a Will Anderson every year? I don't know if there's a Will Anderson type of player every year, but you will have the chance to pick a really good edge rusher more than you will have the chance to have the haul of a lifetime with a really good quarterback class in the top 3 that you might be able to trade back for. That one is more rare. The trading back aspect situation that they're in right now, that is more rare than even I think Anderson is as a good football player. So
well put. Yes. Well put. So there's one thing that I want to say before I force you off this podcast. And everybody listen. Stop mocking running backs to the Arizona Cardinals. You son of a bee. It was Kazir. So here's the thing. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was one of your boys at Pro Football Focus. The Cardinals were top 15 at the time of the initial mock mid-season, before Kyler Murray got hurt, before everything and all the wheels fell off. Bijan Robinson at 14 was the pick in the mock. I can't remember who it was, and I should have done my homework. I completely forget who it was, but I believe it was a Pro Football Focus guy. The first thing I sent you a text initially, get off it. Okay? just stop. You need to just not make me lose my hair more than I already am.
To be fair, that was when Cliff was still and Kime were still in charge.
So I see.
It was possible, it was a predictive mock.
Okay, I guess that's fair. I guess that's a good point. And then number 2, my dream here is Cardinals to trade back to the early teens and then call Jerry Jones, be like, how much do you want Bijan? Like that would be the double. Trade back to late 20s, even though I know it moves them down 20 spots. That could garner them 3 first-round picks, like collectively. So that's why, because how crazy is he going to be?
Yeah, and there's a really good way that you could go about it, right? Because talking about a massive trade back, just in a reality of them going from 3 to, let's say, 11, and then 11 to 26, like it's a huge jump. You're getting massive hauls for both of those, right? You're probably getting 2 first-round picks from the Titans at least to move back. But then if you're trading with the Cowboys, you're not just going to say like, oh, okay, well, give us draft capital, like next year, because then the classes get too big, right? You can't have, even if the picks are near the top of the draft, you can't have like 8 picks in the first 2 rounds. Like you're just not going to have the salary cap or the roster space probably to like sign all those guys. So that's my dog is sneezing next to me, so I'm very distracted right now. But what you could do with Jerry Jones is say to him like, hey, Jerry, just give us picks in the future. You don't even have to think about it. Like, just give us like a bunch of second round picks and a first round pick in like 2025 or something, like 2026 or whatever. And he'll be like, I get Bijan right now and I don't even have to pay the price for it until 2025. Good, great, fine, we're good. And so like then you're the Cardinals and it's like, okay, we have the extra first round picks next year and maybe the year after. And then we have all the extra day 2 picks in the year or 2 that follow that. That's fun if you're a GM. That's a kid in a candy store if you're a general manager.
That's what we like to do here on Locked On Cardinals. Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trade, all over Pro Football Focus. Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. Anytime.
I'm going to kind of synthesize everything we just talked about next. Locked On Cardinals. Final segment. Got off the rails there. Trevor Sikkema, one of my dear friends here in the business. One of great follows at Tampa Bay Trey on Twitter, all over Pro Football Focus. One of the best minds that I've been lucky enough to come into contact with, whether it be at Locked On or elsewhere. And I just want to put a button on the last thing that we talked about, because I know that it seems like crazy talk. Okay, I get called crazy a lot just because I challenge you to think outside of just what other people are saying. If the Cardinals do trade back to 11, somebody's going to call them for that pick, because they're not trading back to draft somebody. It's not like they're trading up to a spot. They're like, I'm going to take this person. If they trade back to 11 and a quarterback slips, or Bijan Robinson is there, or a wide receiver is there that somebody wants, they're like, listen, if we're in the mid-20s, move up to 11, that's a lot different than moving up to 5 to get their guy. The Cardinals moving back twice. This is what happens when you go from the doldrums of the NFL towards relevancy again. You accumulate high draft stock, high draft capital, and you hit on the draft picks. And the Cardinals positioning themselves to do just that is something that could definitely benefit them for the future. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.